Welcome into the Inside Bassmaster Podcast, episode 119, and this is the Classic Recap episode. I'm your host today, Ronnie Moore, and my co-host, as always, Kyle Jessie, chiming in from the Birmingham Bassmaster headquarters. I'm in Little Rock, and the podcast is presented by our friends at Black Rifle Coffee Company. Now, this month, going on for the next few months, they have something special. If you were at the Bassmaster Classic this year, you got to see it in their booth. They are doing a massive giveaway from our sponsors and our presenting sponsor, Black Rifle Coffee Company. We are excited to offer the opportunity for one fan to win a fully rigged and custom wrapped Bass Cat Cougar FTD. This is a full-blown tournament-ready bass boat. They will also get a boatload of Black Rifle coffee, a ton of rods, reels, and tackle, and $10,000 cash prize. We partner some of the best brands in the industry to offer a top-of-the-line bass boat from our friends at Bass Cat. If you want to get in on the drawing, text the word Bass Cat to 91852. Once again, text the word Bass Cat to the number 91852 for your chance to win. I believe this runs through August. Kyle, you were just saying off the air, you might get in on this. I don't know if we're allowed to win it, but those who do text the word Bass Cat to number 91852 have the chance to win a Bass Cat boat fully wrapped in the Black Rifle Coffee Company logo and colors. And we got to see that at the Classic in the Expo if you were there as a fan.
Yeah, you're going to have to give me just a second because I'm actually about to text that number right now for the opportunity to win that. I mean, not only will you be running around the lake in a nice Bass Cat FTD, you'll also be running off Black Rifle coffee. I mean, let's be honest, a boatload of Black Rifle coffee will get you a long ways. So certainly a cool opportunity there. And yeah, I got to see some photos of the boat itself. I didn't get to see it in person, but yeah, it was a sweet ride.
Don't worry if you don't get in on it right now at this moment. If you lose your focus and you want to listen to the rest of the podcast, feel free to do so. I believe it does run through August. Now, Kyle, the Bassmaster Classic 2023 edition, Knoxville, Tennessee. We have to go through some of these different things because they knocked it out of the park. We broke the Classic attendance record. We had set it in 2019 at this very venue. It had been broken last year at Lake Hartwell in 2022. So they were in second place, and they have now retaken that spot. East Tennessee is a huge fishing community. Knoxville is a great town for the Bassmaster Classic. And boy, the water, the playing field this week, last week was very, very difficult. And even though it was the third time of the Bassmaster Tournament Series being there, threw everybody for curveballs that they could not expect to happen during this event. So what was the Classic attendance record that they broke? I believe they had 153,000 and change. Like Hartwell broke it with 154,000, and then they went ahead and just said, instead of a couple hundred or maybe 1,000, let's just break it by almost 10,000.
Yeah, no question. I mean, 163,914 people, and anybody that was at the Classic, you would have no problem believing that, because just to get into the expo every day and get into the weigh-in, the lines were, I mean, they were, a mile long is like an expression. They might have been a mile long. I saw the reels that were posted on social media. And let's just say this: I was glad to have a media credential to walk right in the back gate, because it was a big line, and the fans certainly showed up and made for an incredible atmosphere during the weigh-ins. At takeoff, of course, one of the absolute greatest venues for a takeoff for crowds and spectators to be able to watch. And like I said, I mean, just from my perspective, I know the anglers appreciate it to no end, that support and that many people showing up, but it really does make for such a great event for everyone. It justifies and it lets you know why you do this. People here in this office and at the JM office, work their butts off to make this event happen. And it just, like I said, it gives you a lot of satisfaction to see that many people enjoy it and show up.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at it, we'll have Jeff Gustafson, our Bassmaster Classic champion, on the podcast today, and you could look at it and be like, oh, it was chalk. Oh, John Cox was in the top 5. He was there last time. Oh, Brandon Lester, like, oh, it's the same guys, but the way they had to fish this week to get it done and be able to compete in the Classic, and the fact that it was Gustafson, that Gussy had the biggest bag on day 1, the biggest bag on day 2, and then had to kind of just catch 2 fish to win the Classic. it goes to show how hard it was to be consistent and how tough it was. And we said it coming in, there's always one bad day for an angler. And I guess if you set the bar so high those first 2 days, you're bound to have a bad day. But Kyle, we can get into all of this and more, but I don't want to keep our guests waiting. We're going to jump in and be able to talk to Jeff Gustafson himself, fresh off of his life-changing Bassmaster Classic title. What a huge accomplishment for him. And I'm excited to talk to Gussy today. There's our classic champion right there, Jeff Gustafson. Can you hear us, Gussy?
We're here, yeah. How's it going?
Man, are you somewhere else, or did you make it fully back to Canada with the trophy?
Yeah, we made it back home. That's probably the first Bassmaster Classic trophy in Canada. And I don't know if you can see very good, but the lake is still frozen. There's still snow up to my waist out the front window. But yeah, we made it back. We got in at like 2:30 in the morning last night, which was a bit of a long haul, but my buddy Brian Gustafson, who makes the Smeltnator jig that I used, him and his wife Bree drove back with us and helped with the drive, so that made life a lot better. And yeah, I'm lucky I got some good friends.
I imagine this has been a relaxing couple of days. You've had nothing going on, just been able to put your phone on silent, not worry about anything, right?
Hey, I put about probably 6 hours of driving in over the, whatever. It took us a while to get back, and I'm still at I don't know if you can see that, but I'm at like 412 text messages yet to go. So there's people I gotta, I feel bad, but I will get to them all. But yeah, what a weekend and what an event, and I still can't believe it.
Well, I think 37 of those messages, Kyle, are probably from me and you to him. So you don't have to worry about at least 37 of those. The other 370 you have to worry about. But yeah, Jeff, that's the biggest thing in the sport, is winning the Classic. But as a competitor at the top level of your game that have won tournaments before, this one, it's so hard to put in perspective. Like, everyone seems to be at a loss of words to try to describe what they're feeling. Has any of that kind of came back to you reflection wise? I mean, obviously the money's awesome. The trophy's such an honor, especially having Ray Scott at the top of that. But then,
yeah,
you'll be put in a casket long, from now, and you'll be Jeff Gustafson, Bassmaster Classic Champion forever. Like, that doesn't ever go away.
No, it doesn't. And like, you just look at the names on there, and Denny Brower and Rick Clun, and obviously KVD a bunch of times, and just Casey Ashley, Jordan Lee. I mean, Hank. There's a lot of amazing champions, and man, it just doesn't feel real that some kid from Northern Ontario just brought the Bassmaster Classic trophy home. And yeah, it's crazy. Just a lot of things kind of collided and went my way. And it's funny when you win one of these tournaments, like there's a luck factor a little bit, and a lot of things kind of got to go your way. And I think if, and we saw how hard it was on Sunday, I think the tournament would have been a few days later. I probably would have finished 40th, and I wouldn't be talking to anybody. And if it would have been a few days earlier, I probably would have been done in 20 minutes every day. I mean, it was crazy that it worked out the way that it did.
One thing you had to deal with, outside of the conditions were doubters. I mean, you had plenty of doubters. There was no question about it. I actually got a clip sent to me from a fan of the podcast, and we're going to go a little rogue here, and I just want to play this really fast. You guys just listen and tell me what you think.
For him, what are the chances that those smallmouth and that little honey hole is still running around that boulder? You know what I mean?
Zero chance.
I don't know.
That was Ronnie, right?
Yeah,
Kyle,
it was Ronnie.
That was Ronnie. He said zero chance.
Whoa. That exact quote right there said, what are the chances they're swimming around that canal? And for the most part, that canal, that contributed to one of the 12, and there's some other guys who, but Jeff, explain to us. I've already bowed down to the king at the Classic myself. I've already tried to use all the loopholes that you didn't catch a limit every day. One of them was a mean mouth. I've done all that, but explain how different it was, because it wasn't the same. It was Jeff Gustafson, it was John Cox, it was Brandon Lester. These guys all were in the same factor of the last few years here, but you had to do it different. Same rod, same line, same bait, same everything, but it was different for you.
Yeah, so obviously, like, I learned a lot from last time. And when we were there in 2021, it was interesting. Like, obviously, that canal was the first place I went and looked at. I launched my boat the first day of practice last week, and that's where I went. And I dropped my bait down, and it was like I never left. I mean, just like here they come. They're still here, and it's like, you kidding me? But then what happened, like, as the first day of practice went down, I sort of hung around that area quite a bit, and here come the boats. And then the second morning of practice, it was the Saturday before the tournament. I show up to the ramp. It was real cold that morning, and I don't know what I got messing around with something. So I got to the ramp probably maybe a half. For our practice days, we're usually out there from dark to dark, and I got there maybe a half hour after the sun had kind of got up, and it was cold that morning, like well below freezing, and anyway, I get to the ramp. I can't even park. It's completely packed. There's like 100 boat tournament going on. And I come around the corner, and I mean, you could hardly even get through the canal. There were so many boats in there. So between our guys and all these local tournament guys. So then I realized no one's winning the tournament in this canal. It's getting too much pressure. There's fish here, but like, they're too hard to catch. I mean, I feel like I'll be able to maybe take a couple out of here, but like, it's going to be too hard. So I did a little largemouth fishing that afternoon, and I was kind of down, to be honest, because after I saw there's fish there again, I was very excited after the first day of practice, but I realized that I'm not going to be able to win the tournament there, and B, I better stick to smallmouth fishing. And I did catch a few largemouths on a little Bagley crankbait, fishing some shallow stumps, and it was fun. But I think I caught 8 of them in the afternoon on Saturday, and like 2 were keepers by a bit, and the rest were like 13.5 inches. I mean, just not quite keepers. So that if it's the classic, you want to try to fish to win, and that's a cliche thing to say, but I knew from last time that the smallmouth thing existed. And I gotta try to find it somewhere else. And you go mess around, you leave that canal and go, work your way away, and it's just hard. Like, you fish and fish and fish, and you don't catch anything. So the third day of practice, I started to go down, work my way down Tellico a bit farther, and I ended up, I don't know, around lunchtime, I'm idling along, and I see a little bit of rock on a ledge. And I mean, there was hardly any rock out there. It was really hard to find anything unique on the bottom. And the other thing that I learned from last time was that if you wouldn't necessarily see the fish on your console sonar if you drove over them. So I saw this rock, turned around. I hadn't stood up in a while. I go up and drop a bait down off the front, and I mean, it's like 30 feet of water. My bait gets to 20 feet, and here they come. It's like a volcano of smallmouths. And a 17-incher gets it. I reel it up. I drop my bait back down again, catch a 4-pounder. And I mean, they're following it right to the surface. It's like a massive school of them, and there's big ones, and like, wow. So I just waypoint, there's a spot. And I kept going, and at about 4:30 in the afternoon, I found the second spot, and same deal. And I mean, I drifted along this point just saw a little something on the bottom, like, maybe. And I threw a bait down there, and like, here they come. But I drifted for like 30 yards, and I mean, it was just constant. I think I could have caught 20 pounds that day in like less than 5 minutes. I mean, they were that savage, and like, wanted to eat, and there was lots of them. But that point was obvious on the map. I mean, I'm like, there's no way none of these guys aren't going to find these things. And luckily, I spent the last day of practice looking for more, and I found a few other places that had a little bit of life on them, but not like a big school like these two places had. And it was tough because that was last Sunday and the tournament didn't start till Friday. So it was a long time, especially this time of year between the finding the fish and then actually having to fish them in the tournament. And fortunately it just kind of all worked out. But same bait, same kind of, pattern and program as last time, but on some different places.
You mentioned obviously the amount of pressure that area was getting. It seemed like, partially part of our reasoning, and I'll throw myself in there too because Ronnie's been getting all the heat. I don't necessarily.
Hey, I'll take it.
I don't necessarily know that I thought it was going to work out this way either, but part of the reasoning I think a lot of people thought that was that this area would get so much pressure that it would be hard to duplicate that again. Before the tournament even started, what was your mindset there? Did you expect there to be, that much pressure? I mean, I assume you probably had to figure, and then going into practice, obviously, what was your mindset there? Like I said, before you even got there.
Yeah. I mean, you had to expect the guys were going to check it out, and I don't blame them. I mean, it was, like that second day, it kind of bugged me a bit, like it's sort of a few of the people that were in there, and it shouldn't, and I'm over it now, but I let it bug me a little bit. But yeah, I mean, that's just the way it goes. And, when we go back there again, I'm sure a lot more people are going to be looking in Tellico to find the smallmouths. And the one thing that, again, that just helped me was I knew what existed there for the potential, and obviously, like, getting to fish the way that I did, I'm comfortable doing that. It's not the funnest I've seen a lot of comments that people hated watching that, but I mean, it was pretty awesome the way that you guys were able to put together
for sure.
to see my screen, the Mega Live screen, and you could see what I was doing and see all the fish down there and how they were kind of interacting with my bait. And it's a fun way to fish. I really enjoy doing that, and it's something I've caught thousands of bass on that bait and walleyes, and it's an effective way to fish if it's cold water and the fish are in deeper water.
You even caught a Magnum crappie in the middle of the Bassmaster Classic. You dropped down on one, we're like, that's one right there, and we got him, and it was a crappie. But yeah, can you explain that? Because me and Kyle both don't have it, but we both see the need for it. And the folks who at home say it's cheating, everyone, it's the same playing field. I don't expect high school, this is the way I say it, I don't expect high school basketball players to play with the same quality ball and have the same shoes, have the same court, their nets are it's always going to be worse than what they play in the NBA. It's always going to, the footballs that high school football players play with are not what the NFL guys play with. So we are comparing everyday Joes that fish tournaments to anglers fishing in the Bassmaster Classic as if it's got to be exactly equal, but it's not. But everyone in this tournament had the same ability, same technology. And when you saw those fish, you didn't see those fish. So hear me out here. Every time we saw your screen and pulled it up for a catch, there was nothing there until your bait was going down. So just like Brandon Lester having to crank down a mud bank to catch fish and know they were there, you had to actually fish structure to even know if there were fish were there. So explain that, how these fish position basically bellies on the bottom before you before you do it.
I didn't get so when I was talking about how I was spending all this time idling around, that's one thing that I learned from last time that maybe a lot of the guys sort of didn't know and hadn't learned yet. Was that these things would really hunker down on the bottom and you wouldn't see. That's why you wouldn't see them on your regular, idling over them on your console. And on the second morning of practice, one of the other things I did, Aquaview is a sponsor of mine and have been for a long time. I'm friends with Colt Ringer, the owner, and I carry an Aquaview in my boat. It's an underwater camera. All the time, and it's just a really good pre-fishing tool and education, to educate yourself on your favorite fishing spots or ID fish that you see on your sonar. It's just a quick thing that, I don't spend a lot of time with it usually, but I can drop it down and look at stuff quickly and, brush piles and boulders and just why is this one corner of this point always where the fish are? You can drop it down and learn that. And I went and looked at the places in the canal where I caught the fish last time with the aqua view, and I saw like these big cracks in the rock, and I could see these smallmouths were like sitting belly to the bottom down in these cracks. So when you'd put a bait over them, they'd show themselves, but otherwise they just kind of sat down there, and there's a little bit of current. It was just perfect. They could hide, and when something came over that they could eat, they could bust up and get them. But that I knew that was a thing, and that I think helped me to be able to find these few spots that I did. But it was consuming, because almost every single point or piece of structure, you almost had to go and do a little float over it and put a bit there and just sort of see what happened. And I think that was a pretty key thing. And I shouldn't even be talking about that, because that would be my main, thing that would, whenever, I'm sure we'll go back there again, because Knoxville's just an amazing place to hold a tournament. I mean, they love bass fishing, and I couldn't believe how well everything went, how well we were treated. And but yeah, it's it's not the easiest place that we get to fish. And but I think a lot of people can relate to it, because it's not, we all don't have a place outside our door where we can necessarily go catch like 50 bass every day. It was a challenge, and it was neat because just about everyone in the top 5, I think, was kind of fishing a little bit different, and just trying to grind it out in their own way.
Yeah. So before you jump in, Kyle, I was going to say that was that, people were saying what a poor Bassmaster Classic it was. The winner had 2 fish on the final day, 6 pounds and change. The difference, there's no difference for me of you catching 18 and a half, 17 and a quarter, and 6 3/4 compared to catching 14, 14, 14. Like, do you want them to look more consistent? But you had done your job the first 2 days. You had the biggest bag on day 1, the biggest bag on day 2. You had 2 of the 3 biggest bags of the tournament. And then you just did what was necessary. Whether you, like Vin Diesel and Fast and Furious, whether you win by an inch or a mile, winning's winning. Whether you gave up 4 pounds of your lead or not, you did your job the first 2 days to allow you to have that opportunity. And I just wanted to say that out there before we moved on, was that, yeah, maybe we want 14 a day. That sounds awesome, but you did it differently, and you did your job. You front loaded your job the first 2 days.
Yeah, no, for sure. I was fishing to win, and that's a cliche thing to say, but it worked out for me. I knew that those were the winning fit. I knew if I could catch a limit every day, I would probably win. And
me too.
I think that more of the guys were probably gonna like just totally focus on smallmouth like I did, but I don't know that anyone really put all their effort into it like the way that I did. And it was that last day was hard. And I think, again, like, people can probably relate to that. If you fish tournaments, every day isn't easy. And it was a rough day for me, like, emotionally, and like, I had a lot right here. And but I kept my head down, and I just kept trying to get the job done. And I fished hard, and I didn't, I don't think I did anything wrong. The ride home was horrible. I didn't think I had a chance to win, and I thought I blew this great opportunity that I had put myself into for. And it's a crazy sport. You just never know, like, how things are gonna end up.
I was gonna say, I think you caught 2 17-inchers on that final day, right?
Yeah, a few. Like, I caught several fish that I measured, and just, that was tough too. Like, it was, they had to be 18 inches. And I think that probably turned people off from really focusing fully on smallmouths too. But that was the thing. If you got one, they were good. They were the fish you wanted,
Well, that's one thing I wanted to bring up anyways, and it's perfect transition into it. Obviously, take that last day. I think this is what anybody that's ever bass fished, like you mentioned, could like feel the emotion, just because they could put themselves in that spot generally, obviously not that amount of pressure, but and know what that was like. I just want to know from, the start of the day, the start of that morning, to, the time you put the boat on the ramp, like, tell me, like, the progression of, like, the timing that you went from super confident because you could tell at like takeoff, you could look at photos and tell like this dude's about to kick ass. Like he's about to literally take this in the first 30 minutes and it's gonna be over. To like, I didn't get to watch live, of course, but like the progression of that time all the way until that run back.
Yeah, I knew that it was going to be hard on the last day. Like I just knew from like the first day everything was really easy. It went exactly how I hoped it would. And the second day, the end result looked really good, but I knew they were getting hard. It was getting harder. And I just didn't have a lot of places. Like I was kind of relying on a few. It looked easier for everybody, I think, that he's just going to go catch another limit of smallmouth and it's over. But it wasn't. I knew it wasn't going to be that easy. When I got out there and started fishing, guys, I mean, I honestly I was shaking. I was shaking all morning, and I think maybe when I caught that first fish, that it went away a little bit, but then it was back after not long after, because I knew like the time just starts. It's crazy how when you're having a hard day, the time just seems to fly by, and next thing you know, it's 11:30 and we're halfway through the day. Next thing it's 1:30, and no, I mean all day I was a nervous wreck, and I don't think I made any bad decisions because of that, simply because I didn't have a lot of options. I had enough time to kind of fish the places I wanted to fish, and that was what I had. And but yeah, I in all honesty, I was nervous, and I was shaking in the morning, like trying to hold my rod. Like I couldn't hold my rod as still as I wanted to. Even it was a weird feeling. Like I've never had that before, and it's a big spectacle, man. I mean, it's in the morning, like all the people, and I mean, I had a lot of people that I love at the takeoff in the morning, and then you leave and there's Canadian flags like everywhere, and hanging off the bridges. Like it was like it. I mean, people just have no idea how much that event means to people that love bass fishing. I mean, it's insane how the crowds come out, and there's just so much passion from everybody. It's very special, that's for sure.
I think there's a couple anglers who have said it, during the classic or after winning a classic, that this is the week where fishermen feel like they understand what it's like to be a rock star. Like you're a lead singer of a band, you get off the bus and everyone's cheering for you. Like when you guys idle away from that dock and there's 6,500 people setting a record there. There's 163,000 over the 3 days of events that we've had. That's the spot, other than the confetti and the smoke and the trophy. Like those little moments kind of let you know that what you do matters to a lot of people, and it's pretty dang cool.
Yeah, it is. It's hard to believe, just like we're going bass fishing and this many people care about it. And yeah, it meant a lot, man. That was that, and then obviously like the Champions Toast, the great tradition that Bassmaster has. We had a big room at the hotel, and that was incredible too. I mean, I got like KVD showed up, and I got to visit with him for a bit and get a picture with him and the trophy, and just like Christy and Hackney. I mean, these guys are legends. And then a lot of my friends from home and family. I at one point I turned around, and one of my friends from back at home, him and his wife are just standing there, and they have a newborn baby. And all this, I turned around, and they're just like, there they are. And I'm like, you guys drove all the way here and we're here for this afternoon? And they're like, yeah, man, we wouldn't miss it. And just like, yeah, it was pretty emotional. And then like, were you guys there when all the Aussies came down?
I was not. I missed that part.
I heard the commotion outside the room. I'm aware of what happened.
It was so cool. Like, Carl, obviously, like, I went over to Australia with Carl last fall and like had the trip of a lifetime over there, and met a lot of his friends, and a lot of them came over to support him in his first classic. So I don't know, it was starting to wind down a little bit, and they all showed up, and Carl got the Aussie oi 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 cheer going on, and it was so funny. That was one of the highlights of the whole night. And then when we left the hotel and went up the road into Knoxville, like onto the streets of Knoxville, and we were going up the streets, guys, and they were doing the chanting, and it was so cool. Pretty special. There was about 30 Canadians, 30 Americans, and 15 Aussies, and we just went out and had a time downtown Knoxville.
Hey, the fact that none of y'all got locked up with that group of people, I mean, is impressive. But how does it feel to be loved by 3 countries? I mean, Canada's your homeland. Australia obviously loves you, and Americans think you're the nicest guy going. So there's probably other countries that admire you as well, but those are the 3 we know of.
Yeah, no, it was that was the highlight of the whole weekend. I mean, this being on stage at the end is obviously a rush and special, and I'm glad like Shelby got to be out there and be part of that. But that just happened so fast, and it's so loud and bright, and like I wish all I could say to like the next person that gets to win that trophy is just to try to enjoy that, take that moment in a little more. Like I wish I almost don't even remember how it went. It just happened so fast, and it's so crazy. But other than that, I mean, just the Sunday night, getting to visit with everyone and took a lot of pictures with people with the trophy. That was the coolest part, I think.
So you mentioned Jason Christie a minute ago. I'm not sure this has been addressed, but when Jason came out and gave you the trophy, I'm pretty sure he hit you so hard it bruised your back.
It was so loud.
Are you physically okay after that? Because it hurt my back.
Yeah, like I don't remember that or anything. And no, I have no bruises on my back. So Jason is a great person. And before you like, so Shelby and Shanna, his wife, while their fiance, they're getting married later this year. They hit it off a couple of years ago, and last year and this year we travel with them for the irregular Elite Series events and stay together. And I think the perception a lot of people have with Jason is that he's like just stone cold and intimidating and all that, but I mean, he's a killer on the water. We all have seen that, and phenomenal fisherman, one of the best ever to do this. But he's funny and just a great person to be around. Like he's just always in a good mood, and it's helped me a lot, I think, in the last year. Like just being around, like just how calm he is all the time, and I've got to fish with them, and quite a few of these guys, that are really good. I've got to fish with, and it's the thing that I've learned is like it's not secret lures. It's just a lot of common sense, good decisions, and make good casts. Like it's a lot of do the simple things good, and that's usually what's going to lead you to success. Like don't make things more difficult than they need to be. And I think that's rubbed off on me a little bit, maybe from him, but yeah, that was there was no one else I would have rather got the trophy from. And that was a pretty special moment too.
Yeah. I think there's a couple of trophy handoffs lately that have been super cool. And that was when Hank was going to hand it off to himself after going back to back. Trip Weldon, it was his last classic, and so he got to hand it off to Hank, which was fitting. And then obviously handing it off to the heartbreak, Cherry handing it to Christy. They've both dealt with heartbreak in the classic, and now roommates handing it off. I wanted to ask you, and if you could address this, there's other anglers getting quite a bit of heat, and it was the weirdest thing this week seeing everyone talk about the canal, or even if you had a spinning rod targeting smallmouth, you were fishing for Gussy's fish. I've never seen it where there's never a Tennessee River ledge in a summertime event that's saved for the past winter. It seemed like people felt weird about doing it, but some of them have either talked to you about it or they showed their presence every day, and it was fine. On that final day, you lead the boats down the river, and a couple people obviously passed you on the way and beat you there. Can you talk about the moment? Because we saw a glimpse of it on live, but it was so quick, and there was some fish catches that we didn't do it. But where you and Benton and Felix and some of the people who actually spent every morning in there, Corey, where you guys picked your starting spot. I believe your day 2 final call is where you wanted to start day 3, and that's where the misconceptions happened.
I heard, and I mean, like I said, it's been chaos for me the last few days, but I heard that Benton was getting some heat for where how the third morning started, and Drew and I are all good. Like he's one of the last guys I would ever have an issue with. He's a stand up, dude, and he'd been fishing around in there all weekend, and so what happened at the end of day 2, I went and hit a waypoint from my 2021 tournament, and it was literally at like the last minutes before I was going to run back to Knoxville, and I drifted over this. It was just a little bit of a hole and a little bit of rock, and he obviously found it too. But I drifted over it and I caught a 3.5 pounder, and there was a group of fish there. So I had a good call at the end of day 2, and left there and said, well, I got a spot to start in the morning. So when I rolled into the canal in the morning, I mean, there was just boats everywhere. I slowed down and idled in. Well, Benton's over right around where I want to go. So I go over there, and I mean, I was going to, if he wasn't like right on it, I'm going to go drift right over where I wanted to. I knew I had one rock I wanted to drift over, and I got close to it and he was right on it. And I just sort of idled around, and I said, sorry, I didn't, like, I came in too close on him. He was in 4th place. It's not like he was in, like, he didn't go there because he knew that's where I was going to start, and I hadn't been starting there or anything. And so, and then I idled away, and I guess he caught a big one, so people were like losing it. And there was no issues there with him, and I haven't got to. I'll probably send him a message this afternoon and just but he knows we're good. We didn't have any issues.
Well, he asked me, how it was construed on live. And I said, well, the crazy thing was the final day of both events here, the 2021 Elite and the Classic this year, something's been weird for you. We had the big fog delay, and that was your morning window, and we were wondering if you were going to capitalize. You end up winning that event, no problem. And then this year it was, well, there's literally just, if he would have known you were starting there, he probably wouldn't have started there. Or if you knew he was starting there, you wouldn't have even, and it's miscommunication. Yeah. But when you were idling away, he did catch like the biggest smallmouth of the day. And I was just glad you were looking the other way because of the mentals. I didn't even know.
No, I didn't even see it happen. And I just, well, I'll follow up with him on that, but no, we're good. He did nothing wrong, everybody. So don't be giving him any heat. If there's any of the nasty comments on there, Ronnie, you should go and just delete them today and take them right off.
Well, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to address it. I did with the Bassmaster YouTube comments and things, but people were like, yeah, I bet he learned how to mope in Florida as well. And I'm like, okay, now we're getting, I bet he doesn't own a spinning rod either, and so I wanted you to just your perspective on that, because you went over to another spot, you caught one that was small, and then you ended up heading out of there anyways. But I just wanted to ask
that wasn't my main area. I was just trying to, see if I could take a quick fish out of there first thing. And there wasn't much current, and that made it, I think that sort of made it a little bit tougher too. But I did know, like, the first thing in the morning, that was going to be your best chance to like catch a couple quick ones. And I was moving around kind of quick there, but and that was in my head too, like, don't go too fast, don't like overlook anything, just fish the way that you need to fish. And I think I did pretty good at all that. And even though like the end result wasn't what I wanted on Sunday, I mean, even as horrible as that ride back was, when I got there, before I even like checked in and knew where, how things were looking, I had no regrets. I mean, it wasn't like I had other options to go. And the way if it had been kind of windy, I might have went and found a wind blown bank and like, let's put on a little Bagley crankbait and go catch a couple. And I just never felt like, with the calm, slick conditions, that was a good plan to do either. So it all worked out. And it's, decisions are a big deal. And fortunately, the 2 fish were enough.
Can you explain the current in there? Because the way the body of water lays out, you have Tellico flowing, to the west to meet to meet Fort Loudoun right there at the canal. And then on the Fort Loudoun side is where the TVA dam is that flows to Watts Bar and stuff. So is the water coming down the main drag of Fort Loudoun and kind of pushing in there, but then it's getting pushed against by Tellico? Or is it going, because I feel like the way y'all stood with your back to Tellico at times, that you would have been getting pushed if Tellico water was moving in, but I felt like, it was the other way.
No, all the time that I've spent in there, Tellico always flows into Fort Loudoun. But the reason you were seeing guys with their back to Tellico was that there was hardly any current. So you're just trying to stay on top of your bait, and basically, however, but if the current was, and from the last time, like I only really got to fish in there in the tournament days last year. I found those fish literally at the end of practice, didn't really know what I'd found. And I hadn't been back since, but I thought the wind had more effect on it than it did. Cause I remember, a couple of those days, especially the last day in 21, I mean, it got really windy and the current just got really cranking through there. But I think it is sort of manufactured by the dam and what they're doing. Has a bigger influence. Cause like, I mean, the first day it was fairly windy, that southwest wind blowing in there, and there still wasn't that much current in the canal. And I think the current makes it better and probably makes the fish make dumb decisions a little bit more than when it's slick. But that's why you saw the boats not all just pointed towards Tellico, because there wasn't a lot of current. There's a little bit, there always is a bit, but not but you're trying to just chase your bait and just stay on top of it.
We've obviously talked about the fishing and then, obviously the tough final day, but let's talk about the positive. The final day, you win. That whole experience, the Super Six, the preview video before, I don't know if you got to see it, if you were backstage.
Yeah, we had a little screen backstage, but like when that was playing, like I love that stuff, and that gets me emotional too. And
us too.
I was trying to like kind of watch it, but also we're getting told like where we're gonna go stand and how this is gonna go. So I'm kind of listening, and then I'm kind of just like, oh my god, I have two, like this is gonna be so close, and it's stressful, and so it was a lot. Like that was, yeah, but what an experience, like getting to be part of that. And they, they just know how to put on a show, and it's pretty special. Yeah.
Well, one of the things I was going to ask, like that video, obviously it talked about a dream, and that's obviously been something since 2019 we've talked so much about. I mean, big bass, big stage, big dreams. When did that dream start for you? Like, give the fans an idea that maybe don't know, like, how did you get your start bass fishing? Who are some of the people that influenced you to do that? And just talk about your journey from, start to hoisting the Bassmaster Classic trophy over your head.
Yeah. So where I live in Kenora, Ontario, we live on Lake of the Woods, big lake, great, excellent fishing. And we have a tournament that started here in 1988, the Kenora Bass International. When I was a little kid, my parents would take me to the weigh-in, and it's a big community event. I mean, like thousands of people will be at the weigh-ins especially on the last day. And when I was 10 years old, like my dad took me fishing when I was a kid, but like he fished for lake trout and walleye, like fish that you ate. Nobody ate bass, so he didn't really fish for bass, but he saw that I was really interested in it and like into it. And my Christmas present when I was 10 years old was an entry fee for my dad and I to fish the KBI, this big tournament. And our goal the first year was like literally just to catch a bass so we could walk across the stage. And the first few years we caught a few, and and then eventually we started to kind of get a little bit more competitive and get into it. And I mean, I just caught the bug early, and all through high school and college and growing up. I mean, I'd fish. We have a lot of good community run tournaments in my part of the world. July through September, it's a short season, but I'd fish them all, and that was probably how I made the most money during the year, was fishing in these local tournaments. But as far as like following Bassmaster and stuff, like we got TNN up here when I was a little kid, and I got VHS tapes. If my mom still has them. I tape every, in Fisherman and Bassmaster show and some of the, Roland Martin and, I would tape all the shows and certainly watch all the Bassmaster. That was always my favorite. And so I was familiar with the Classic and knew what big deal it was. And, I, probably around like the mid 90s, like when I was 11, 12, like that's around when Fritz won. And as a teenager, like Denny won one. Like I can remember watching those shows really good. And, Mark Davis. But yeah, it's been, my life's kind of revolved around this stuff since I was a kid. And, like I can't even express like, yeah, what a dream that is for me. And it just doesn't feel real. And like, I talked to Mercer this morning already, and just, yeah, you look at the names on there, and it's most of the like real legends in the sport are legends because of that trophy. And I can't believe I got one.
Well, I think you're one of the only anglers on there with a classic title that have smallmouth within their bags. I know, obviously since it's moved to the spring, it's a limited amount. We had a couple in the summers. I think Woo Dave's won Lake Michigan. Van Dam wasn't sure if Pittsburgh, if he did weigh largemouth at all, or if they were all smallmouth. He said, I had 12 pounds, so I really don't remember which species they were, but my whole 3 days was 12 pounds. So, so congratulations on that. Has it sank in the fact of the international aspect? We talked about it, Such and I, Such helped me out with this, that there have been 7 countries represented in the Bassmaster Classic. There's United States, obviously, Canada, Japan, Zimbabwe, South Africa, Italy, and Australia with Carl and Kim Bain. So yeah. 7 countries represented, and you're now the second international angler, and it's almost 20 years after the first international angler did it, Takahiro at Lake Wylie in 2004.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's no doubt that America has the most best bass fishermen, bass anglers, and but yeah, it's cool. It's special. Like there's a lot of people that love bass fishing in Canada, a lot of good anglers. And I've said this, a few times already, but like, I know not everyone's going to get the same opportunity that I've got to be on that stage and get to fish the Elite Series. And, but it just, I'm a regular guy. I grew up a regular guy and caught some breaks. I do work hard for sure at every aspect of this, mostly time on the water and fishing as much as I can, but I work hard at it, and it just shows you like dreams can happen. And they certainly did for me this past weekend. But I think you'll see, I think there's more Canadians in the opens this year than there has been, like really going for it, fishing
really
all night.
Tall ones, really big guys.
Yeah, no, and Jamie Bruce is one of them, one of my best friends, and a phenomenal angler. Like I have a hard time beating him in tournaments around home here. And obviously like last year he got a 3rd and a 20th in the 2 Southern Opens he fished. And I think he's gonna have some chances to have good tournaments this year. And the first one at Eufaula, he kind of did middle of the pack, but yeah, he'll have a couple of good tournaments, and I'm hoping he gets a shot at the Elite Series. He's good enough, that's for sure. And but it's a brutal gauntlet those guys got to go through, but that's what makes the Elite Series special. And even when you get there, I mean, you probably get a feeling of like, oh, I'm here now, everything's golden and gonna be easy, and it's not. I can promise you, like, the greatest perk of that trophy right now is I get to fish in the Classic next year, and the rest of this year kind of fish for free. I mean, I don't, otherwise, like normally every single day of the season is stressful. It doesn't matter how good you did the day before or the tournament before, because if you let off the gas and don't, give it everything you got, like these guys will bury you. And I like, for me, I don't feel like I have the most like natural ability. Like I'm not the best caster, and I don't have a lot of like funky tackle. And I guess figure out ways to hang in there, and every once in a while you get a shot to win. And a couple times it's worked out for me, but yeah, I've been doing it this is my 11th season, and I mean I took some bad beatings the early years, but I did well enough to kind of hang in there, and I've learned a lot of things the hard way, and my consistency, now has gotten a lot better. Where that one of the keys is avoiding the bombs, and so that's probably my biggest goal. Make the top 50 in every tournament, get one of those big checks, not but just I really work hard to like figure out how to catch some fish and avoid those bad finishes.
You mentioned getting to see Kevin Van Dam there at the Champions Toast and talking to Jason. Is there anything that anybody has said to you, like previous Classic Champions, anything that stood out to you, like advice on how to deal with everything that comes with it? Or, is there anything that stood out to you that, somebody's told you?
No, but I mean, like nothing specific. Jason told me the other day, he's like, you're going to have fun the next little while. Like, and rolled his eyes kind of like, you're going to be a busy man. But I know, I mean, I guess I know some of the obligations that come with that. And I'm going to just, do every interview and, take advantage of every opportunity I get because of this, and just share it with as many people as I can. But I don't know. It's an honor to have that trophy, and just share it with as many people as I can.
Well, let's just say Jason and yourself, with your big wins the last few years, your 2021 win at the Tennessee River, the next event you went to was a high, muddy, and flooded Pickwick, and it did not go well. Christie wins the Classic, and the next event he gets next to last. Just do not do that. Lake Murray, you got to be on the short list based on the style and how the lake looks and but just don't finish bottom 10.
No, I don't think I will. I'm excited for Lake Murray. I think I'm going to be able to figure out how to get some kind of jerk shad program going there, and I'm going to definitely be looking to do that. I've got some other tricks with that bait, and I think last year, over half the tournaments, I caught fish on a jerk shad on a jig head, like at unconventional places too. It's just something that I've got a lot of confidence in, and most of our events the rest of this year, it's going to be part of my arsenal and program for sure.
Well, Gussy, I appreciate you taking 45 minutes of your time to do the Inside Bassmaster podcast with us. Last thing before we go, Kyle, did you put Jeff Gustafson on either of your fantasy teams at the Tennessee River this week for the Classic?
I already threw myself under the bus. I didn't.
I just want to hear it. I just want to hear it.
Listen,
okay, that's what I thought. Okay,
it was more because I'm looking forward to using him later in the year. That was part of my reasoning.
Well, I don't feel as bad. I used him at Okeechobee for the first event, and he did make the check and was in the top 35 or so in there. So I'll take that. But Jeff, appreciate you, man. You did something that not many people have done. The last time we had less than a limit each day, I believe, of competition was 2017 at Lake Conroe when Jordan Lee won with 12 bass as well. He was front loaded on terrible days and got better every day. You flipped the script there, but it's not the first time we've seen a Classic champ not catch a limit every day of competition. We've had it, I think, Grand Lake when Cliff Pace won, and there's been quite a few before that as well. So history in the making, though. I think if Gussy does move to America, he's going to have to do it somewhere around East Tennessee because Knoxville loves him. And man, like you said, 163,000. What an awesome week we had there, and the crowd was. We had a lot of international flavor in the crowd, which was cool to see. They just do not know how to get around the arena. I was trying to find your family and get them down to see you, and they were everywhere except where I was. So I'm glad it all worked out. But congrats, Gussy. $750,000 in bass winnings now in just 4 years. So maybe you just win 2 or 3 more this year and you'll break $1 million real quick. One of the quickest ones. We'll see.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for everything. And especially over the weekend, you made it help to make it extra special for me. And yeah, I'm grateful to be on that stage, and look forward to seeing you guys here down the road later this year.
Awesome. I think Gussy's the only Canadian that didn't punch me or threaten to punch me in the mouth. So appreciate you and your kindness. Jeff Gustafson, ladies and gentlemen. Kyle, what a champion. Yeah, it's hard to not like Jeff Gustafson. He seems to do it the right way. He's got a great personality for it, humbled, and I tried in the interview room to get him emotional or to get him to open up on what it would mean, but it just came back to like, until it happens to you, I feel like we actually need every classic champ to win too, so they can give us a great answer the second time on what it means, because his life is definitely changing and will continue to change. And there'll be moments this year where someone comes up to him and has a conversation that just, you impacted me at the classic to get into fishing. Thank you. And those kinds of moments like that will happen for the rest of his life for sure.
Yeah, no question. I mean, everybody will remember this classic for so many reasons, but having to overcome the struggles that last day, I mean, you had to know that something crazy was going to happen the final day. I remember sitting in the .com room after day 2 weigh-in, and it looked like it was all but over. Like you could just go ahead and hand Gussy the trophy. And I'll be the first one to say that I thought the same thing. I mean, I thought there was no way anybody was going to overcome it. But I did say, I looked at everybody and I said, it's always when you least expect it is when these comebacks happen. Like the guys coming from 10th place to win and things like that, where it's like before the tournament, day starts, you'd never guess it would happen. And, being on the water, I just remember the first few hours thinking, well, he's got one, but this is best case scenario because it's entertaining, but also he's probably still going to just end up winning and blowing it away. And it just it was such a struggle, and it was so unusual to watch and continue checking my phone and not seeing, Gussy with the limit. So, I can only imagine what that was like, but I'm sure he's so glad to look back and know that it still all worked out, because surely there were thoughts in his head thinking this is not going to go my way. And, for him
No
to be
doubt.
able to not have to live out that, that terror, basically his rest of his life is special for sure.
Yeah, you don't ever want to be the guy that gives up a 5-12 lead, and it's not like other times where if you catch a limit and the guy catches 25 pounds and wins,
right.
Right. If you don't catch a limit, you let that go, no matter how the other people do. But yeah, I talked to the largemouth guys. I talked to Benton, Canterbury, Cox. I did not talk to Schmidt just because the second place, that's the hardest one. At least the guys who are below that know that they had some more work to do for sure. But I talked to a couple of largemouth guys and said, yeah, the door was open like all freaking day. We actually built a second door. We opened the double doors up. We put the framing up for a third door because that door was so wide open. Someone catch a 4-pounder and pull their trolling motor up, they could be the classic champ. And they all had a couple stories, of things. And I think Drew Benton told me that, he had a 4-pounder eat the blades of his spinner bait and get kind of hooked and came off with his trailer hook, in the last few moments. And then he also had a short fish on the final day, so he didn't count that. So he would have made a straight up cull of a 4-pounder for a one that was close, and then wouldn't have had a penalty and could have possibly had it happen. And so I've never seen a classic more wide open for such a long period of time on the final day of the classic after it was already settled, like you said. But I will say, in the TV interview room, when I was sitting there with the anglers and Kevin Spivey was shooting the interviews, when I would ask questions to guys, Brian Schmidt was by far, and you would have thought he was a pound back. You would have thought almost with certain answers he was leading the event, because of how confident Brian Schmidt was that it was going to happen. And he ends up being the one who is the first loser in second place. And it's so hard to see somebody have to lose, when they do give it their all and get so close.
Yeah. And it's one of those things. You hear the phrase, when it's meant to be, so many times. I mean, you mentioned the Benton story. Lester had a similar story, said that the last 5 minutes of the day,
if he had 10 more minutes, yeah.
And he said, he said on stage, what would have happened if I'd have found that spot 30 minutes earlier?
Stetson Blaylock last year, same thing.
100%. I mean, when it's meant to be, it's meant to be. And for Gussy, it was meant to be. I know that was probably not the way that he wanted it to be, of course, as stressful as it was, but what God has for you, you can't stop. I mean, that's just the honest truth about it. And, that was the thing too, is you almost had in your mind that, going into the last day, you're like, man, Gussy's going to be such a great champion. Like you already like had it pre-built in your mind that this was like, he was going to be the classic champion. He was going to represent the sport, for the entire year and yada, yada, yada. And then like the more the day went along, it's just like, who's going to do this? Like who's, like you said, it was very weird to look back and think that like, and I'd like to get some of those guys' takes on it, because every single one of those guys in the top 5, top 6 had the opportunity to win. Which, before the day started, you wouldn't have thought really any of those guys would have had a very good chance. Maybe one or two had an outside chance, but it's one of those deals like we were on the water covering the event and I needed to be back at the ramp and heading back to weigh-in, but I couldn't leave because it was like
still undecided.
He catches one, I was with Canterbury, but it was the same way with Schmidt and really Alt and Benton. It's like any of those guys swing on a 4 or 5 pounder here, and it's like, it's over. Like at that point, because Gussy's running back and these guys have more time to fish. And then obviously the last 2 days the previous 2 days of the tournament, the largemouth bite had gotten so much better late in the day. It was like, somebody is going to do this. You just don't know who it's going to be. So it was really, in so many ways, it was just bizarre how it worked out. But like I said, I'm sure Gussy's glad the way that it worked out.
I'm pretty sure, the first hour of the day, we were like, Benton's in the driver's seat. He catches that 4-pound smallmouth, and we're like, he has a good shot right there. And then you go to the mid-morning, it was Canterbury's time to lunchtime. Canterbury was the one who had closed the gap from 8 pounds to just 3 pounds and was 1 bite away. And then mid-afternoon, about 30 minutes before check-in time, it was Brian Schmidt, and you're like, one more catch. And plus he had 2 1 1/4s in his bag. And I'm like, there's no way they're actually 1 1/4s. If those are 1 3/4, that's an extra pound. He's right there. What about his 2-pounders? If there's a 2 1/2, he's right there. And so that was interesting. And then, like you said, the last 10 minutes, if Lester had 0 or 1 all day, and then he comes in with 4. And I'm like, did you put those on Bass Track? And he's like, yeah, I think we just caught him in the last 5 minutes. And I was like, oh my God, you caught him in the last 5 minutes. So it's crazy how it happens and how they search all day long for a hint of something. And it's either plan D, E, F, whatever it is, plan X, Y, Z. Finally, they get to an area or a technique or a style, and it starts to click, and you're like, I can't even catch them quick enough. Like I have 5 minutes and I can make 3 casts if I don't hook one, kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, it is very, very strange. I mean, to look back the way it was, like, I had shades of Mississippi River last year with Schmidt, because you and I were texting. I don't remember the exact scenario because
said the same thing.
Chris Johnson, and we thought for sure, and when I say we, I'm throwing me in there, even though I didn't think that Brian Schmidt was not going to win, but then he ended up having more than what we thought on Bass Track, and I was like, oh my God, is this going to happen again? Like nobody was with him, coverage wise. I guess obviously a lot of cameras were, but nobody was with him, so I didn't have any like reference point of like asking somebody, hey, how big were his fish actually? Like, is he low on Bass Track? Whatever. I had a pretty good idea of what Canterbury had because I was with him all day long. But it was like, if Schmidt,
there's rumors of him though too.
Yeah, right.
There were some rumors that was like he has 14 pounds and he has 10 1/2 on Bass Track. So I text Carl, his cameraman, and said, Carl, what's he got? And he's like 12 pounds. And I was like, thank you. The rumor was 14, and 12 sounds a lot more like what we saw. And then it was 12-1 or something. I was like, oh, thank God, our cameraman was right on.
How many people were asking me that when I was walking through the media room and like through the stage? They're like, what? Like rumors like he's sandbagging big time. It's like, he's probably sandbagging, but not by like 5 pounds. Not by to do that. Not by enough probably to win. They're like, oh, okay. And obviously it's one of those things. We say all this, and I think you would agree, obviously, I would have been fine with any of those guys winning. Like it's not a matter of like who we wanted to win, because we're naturally unbiased as much as we can possibly be. So I was completely fine with any of those guys winning. it was almost just more frustrating. I said this to my boater, Carson Palmer from, Carson Newman University. Yeah, I told him, I said, these tournaments almost just kind of tick me off because it's you want somebody to just slam the door. Like, I don't know who, I don't care who it is. I just want Gussy to catch an 8-pound smallmouth or something crazy to happen just to like solidify the whole tournament. Yeah, like solidify the whole tournament. And it's like, you just kept waiting and it just never happened. You're like, what is gonna happen at this weigh-in? Like, we have no idea.
Well, you want clarity. I'm the guy who is wrangling the wives of the contenders, and I have to sit there. So my heart has never beat more than the last 25 minutes of weigh-in, where I have to figure out which two ladies to bring, or, obviously I bring Shelby, Gussy's wife, and I've either got to bring Canterbury's wife, Cox's wife, or Schmidt's wife. One of those ladies has to join me. And then I have Shanna, who is the defending champ, that wants to hand flowers off to the champion's wife. And we don't know. And so literally I told Ashley Schmidt, I told Dixie Canterbury, and I told Shelby. Shelby already knew. I said, I got to get you no matter what. I told the other wives, I said, I'm going to go sit up here by myself, but just know if I come over to your row and I say it's time, you got to come with me quick, because we got to get backstage and you got to be ready to go out on stage if your guy wins. And there's always a lady that I tell that I never have to go talk to again. So that was Dixie Canterbury. I feel bad about that, but that was third place. When Schmidt weighs in, I know if I have to get Schmidt or Canterbury's wife. And then literally at the last second, as I'm getting Schmidt's wife, I sit there and think, well, what if John Cox actually has him and we don't know because something happens with Bass Track? Like, it's John Cox. Like, what if? And so I'm like, actually, you know what? All of the ladies right here, I know it's crazy. Let's just sit right here on the stands on the walkway up to the rows. Let's just sit here for 2 more minutes. And when John Cox weighs in, we'll know. And so we knew right when John weighed in, and I took the ladies down to the back and we got ready. And I said, do you guys want to watch the weigh-in happen? And they said, yes. So I bring them over by the Academy big chair where you were, and we were all the, kind of the cameramen and stuff. We have a little area we can go to. So they're standing there with all the anglers that have already weighed in, and they're watching it. And that moment when Mercer said he needs 5 pounds, 4 ounces, that was the first time all day that I knew for sure that Jeff Gustafson won. I knew that he had 6 to 7 pounds. It's hard to have less than 6 pounds with 2 keeper smallmouth. It's hard for him to have more than 7 pounds because he had to measure one of them and the other one wasn't too big over the 18-inch line. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, time to pull my camera out, because I now know that it's going to be Gussy and not Schmidt. And what was crazy was how Gussy had his head down the entire time. He walks over there, shakes Brian Schmidt's hand, and just has his head down the entire time until the weight is called. And then he looks up at Schmidt, they hug, and then he is the classic champion. That moment, it's so vivid in my mind. I've seen so many different, or my eyeballs have seen so many pictures since then, just day to day. You looking outside my window right now, the office, I can see so many things, but those are burned in my memory because of it. And having to go over and hug Schmidt and his wife and say, hey, great week. And to his little boy who's crying, like, yeah, like, that's such a brutal way for it to go, but I wouldn't want to be crowned a champion if I was on that stage any other way. And I wouldn't want every champion to feel that rush, but also it's the opposite emotional dump when you lose,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat, no question. It's one of those things, like, you can't help but feel bad for the last guy that has to walk off the stage. But I will say something that maybe has been overlooked during the final day's weigh-in is how about Scott Canterbury getting up there, giving his whole spiel, and then in front of 20,000 or how many ever, obviously, people that were at weigh-in, hitting them with a Roll Tide on the way out.
With boos. Dude just took the lead of the Classic and gets booed to the hot seat. I mean, it was the loudest boo ever.
I'm certain that nobody in that place that didn't know Scott Canterbury, just just a fan that was a Tennessee fan, nobody wanted Scott to win at that point.
No, not at all.
But I loved it. I thought that was fantastic.
He was definitely at the wrong place, wrong time right there for him to say that. But then Brian Schmidt, he wore a orange Missile Bates hat on day 2. And I said, are you trying to get favor? You're going to have like Tennessee people lined up at the canal preventing Gussy from getting through? Is that why you're wearing the hat? And he said, hey, any kind of support that I can get, I'm gonna get it. So if I get that crowd behind me, it'd be great. And they can obviously tell when Brian Schmidt talks, he is not from East Tennessee. But it was very interesting. And those moments, it was like you said, we want to see anybody win it. If Scott Canterbury wins, it piggybacks off of winning Angler of the Year a few years ago, and then having a couple tough years and making the Classic again, doing it his way, flipping, throwing a spinnerbait, things like he likes to do. If Brian Schmidt wins, he is by far the king of 3-day events. He's already got 10 opens or Toyota Series victories, and then a Classic's a 3-day event. He would then go down, like we said last fall when we interviewed him, as one of the greatest winners of all time. Whether you think his skill is up there with Clun or KVD or Denny Brower, he would have so many semi-pro and pro level victories that you could not have that conversation about winners without including him. And then obviously Gussy leading 7 straight days on the same body of water. That's absolutely insane. And, even guys like Drew Benton had his best Angler of the Year performance last year, finished in 4th place, I believe. And to back that up with a possible win in the Classic the next season would be huge for him. John Cox, we've been waiting for an Elite Series or a Classic trophy from him. This was the first one he's kind of contended in. Same for Drew Benton. And then obviously 6th place, Brandon Lester. Homie is so talented and gifted. Man, I want to remember 2022. I want to remember 2021, 2023. I want to remember this 4 or 5 year stretch for Brandon Lester, because in 20 years, this could be like when people ask, what was the first time you saw Brandon Lester and knew that he had star power? It was when he handled defeat at the St. Lawrence, when he lost that big one, Classy. It was when he won Opens and had such a great top 10 rate in Opens, which are so very difficult. And then curtailing that, momentum into the Elites, the AOI race, the Classics. The dude shows up big time, and I have never been more impressed. I talked to Gerald Swindle on the final day of practice riding with him about Brandon Lester, and he could not help but sing the praises of him. I do think I said it back then, and I'll say it again right now, even more chest pumped out. When MLF was giving invites to anglers from the Elite Series to pull them over to the BPT, and Brandon Lester did not get an invite, I said that would be one of their biggest mistakes, was missing out on him before he became a star, because he was so close to being a star back in 2016, 17, and 18. So those 6 guys to finish top 6, what a huge week for them. But we had storylines at the wazoo there for sure.
Yeah, no question. And to piggyback off the Brandon Lester thing, that's actually what I told, I think Chase Sansom and I were having that conversation the other day. I said, this sounds crazy because Lester, obviously, like, people know how good he is. Like, it's a well-documented thing. But for some reason, you still feel like he's underrated for how 100%. Naturally gifted and how talented he is. Like, and when I said that, Chase looked at me like I was crazy. And I said, dude, I'm telling you, like, I've watched him on the water. I've watched him on live. Like, I've paid as close of attention to him as anyone. And it's like, he's got the same exact ability that, like, the top names in the history of the sport do. And you can just tell, but he gets overshadowed I'm sure for a lot of reasons, but one, because he's just very quiet. Like you said, he's very humble. He's not going to go out and, make a big star about me, anything like that. He's just very humble, but, like, it still feels like he's underrated to some point, which, like I said, seems crazy based on how much success he's had. But it still seems like a lot of folks undervalue just how good Lester is.
Well, I think that we had that podcast last fall, and we said that, like, at what point are you no longer underrated and you're properly rated, or when do you become overrated? And there's probably ebbs and flows, but Brian Schmidt and Brandon Lester were 2 names at the center of those topics. And it's absolutely incredible the way Brian Schmidt and Brandon Lester are, how they are in the interview room when I'm sitting there asking them good questions, tough questions, easy questions, whatever it is. I love their responses. Like, they get it. And I'm just glad everybody's had that, like when if you were around when young Denny Brower was coming up or the young KVD, and you see how they handled themselves before they were stars and then when they hit stardom, man, I think there's some guys definitely on that list, and that we are in that era right now, and I'm excited to be a part of that at my age and being able to maybe remember that in 20 years. But what a big classic. The one thing that Gussy said is that it's cliche, but people swing for it. They go for it in the classic. They try to win this event. And I say this, half of these people don't have a shot to win after day one. You know, they swing on day one and they're below the cut line and they don't have a shot to win on day 2 or 3. They've boxed themselves out of a classic title, to whereas those who just get situated, they get some double digit weight on the board. They let day 1 play out naturally, and then they figure out how to swing day 2 and 3 and make it up, because it can happen quick. But I said that's one major pitfall I feel of anglers is, yes, this is an event you can swing. You get 10 grand no matter what, no points. You want to win, doesn't matter about any other position, for sure. I agree. But the way you approach day 1 will tell me if you have a chance on day 3. And I think all the people who are in contention handled it very smartly. Drew Benton, smallmouth and largemouth. Corey Johnson, smallmouth and largemouth. Brandon Lester, I'm going to go catch numbers on a lipless, go flip a jig. Brian Schmidt, I'm going to go fish stuff off the bank because that's where the water is most stable if it falls or rises. Like John Cox, I'm just going to do what John Cox does. Like I asked John Cox, I said, when are you going to stop downplaying how good of an angler you are? And he just laughs. But like, it's an honest question. Like, people think he's just out there just doing whatever, but like John Cox is very smart and very good at it. Maybe he just doesn't want to explain his secret sauce to us yet, but I really think that that's the deal. And I wanted to play some sound bites that you gathered and that I gathered on the mindset of anglers going into it. We did these interviews, or not an interview, we did these sound bites on the day before the Classic, media day, Thursday before the Classic. I know that it's all hindsight now, but to give the fans a little bit perspective of what anglers like Corey Johnston, Buddy Gross, and some other folks that you interviewed, to kind of let them inside that mind. So Kyle, before we air those, do you have any thoughts about that swinging for the fences, the mindset, things that we're about to show, a look at some of these anglers?
No, nothing specific. I mean, it's kind of like what we discussed before the event. I mean, obviously in springtime events, in classics previously, I think it's one of the sound bites you'll probably play, but I talked to Lester. I mean, it's like you have to have multiple things up your sleeve because every day seems to be different. And it's like, it never fails in classics that like, that's going to be the case. That's why it was so, seemed so strange that Gussy was going to be able to do it for 3 days in a row, doing the exact same thing and have no issues. Obviously it all worked out, but no, it is absolutely true. You have to have different things, kind of have to have a specific game plan. It's not like nobody gets lucky winning the Classic. Like, that's the best way I can put it. Like, you don't just fish down the bank and just happen upon them like in the Classic. Like, you have to have a very tactical strategy of how you're gonna approach the week. And I couldn't agree more with you on that.
Yeah, the four sound bites that came from me and the people I talked to were Corey Johnson, Buddy Gross, Will Davis Jr., and Lee Livesey. Multiple of those guys are they're all champions at different levels of bass. Will Davis fishing his first Classic, Buddy Gross fishing in his home state nearby. Livesey, such a hot tear, and then Corey Johnston, obviously one who does not give a rip where he finishes. He just wants to win the Bassmaster Classic. So those are a couple sound bites from my guys. Kyle, do you have any off the top of your head that you remember your sound bites that we're going to play as well?
Brandon Lester talking about fishing as a favorite. Also Gussy's thoughts on fishing as a favorite.
Awesome.
And then I had Christy talking about some of the things that you have to consider when fishing a favorite. Obviously, he talked about he wasn't necessarily a favorite in his eyes, but still nonetheless explained kind of the things you have to go through and things you can even use to your advantage as fishing as a favorite.
Yeah, Jason Christie, this was his 9th Classic, and he's got 4 top 10s. And going into the final day, he was in the top 10. So he almost had 5 top 10s out of 9 events. So what a great track record. 4 top 10s for Jason Christie. some of those guys, we're going to play the sound bites of their mindset from Media Day, which was the day before the 2023 Bassmaster Classic kicked off.
Yeah, obviously coming into this event, I'm a Tennessee guy, grew up in Tennessee. I kind of have a bit of a target painted on my back, I feel like, this week. A lot of people picking me to win, you know, and I'm just kind of rolling with it. It's my 10th year on the elites. I realize and I understand that when it's your time to win, it's your time to win. I fully believe that everything out here on the water happens for a reason, and that's just kind of how I do things. So, you know, being a local favorite and all that kind of thing, I'm just rolling with it, man. I appreciate it. I appreciate all the support from everybody. I really do. Does it add just a little bit of pressure? Yeah, I can feel just a little bit, but when I get out there and start casting in the morning, it's just another tournament, man. I mean, all you can do is all you can do, and I know that. One thing about this event, there's a lot more eyes on this tournament than a regular Elite Series event, and one thing that I've noticed over the course of fishing 8 Bassmaster Classics now, you better have a little trick up your sleeve for every day. Every single day, you better be able to reach down in the barrel and pull out something that you haven't shown just yet. So I'm hoping that I don't have to go to everything that I have on day one. I'm hoping I can kind of save some stuff as the week comes, as the week goes on, and I'm hoping that that rain that's supposed to come in on day 2 is going to open up some new stuff as well. So it's going to be a good event. I'm looking forward to getting it started.
Yeah, we're ready to roll here. Classic starts tomorrow, and a little bit of pressure. Obviously, the last time we were here, things went pretty good, and I've been excited for this tournament for like a year. And the fishing this week's been all right. I'm fishing for smallmouths again. The same area that I fished last time. There are a few fish around, so I'm gonna hope to, you know, pull a few out of there. But it's been busy. A lot of the other guys are fishing it too, and it's been getting lots of pressure. So it is what it is. I was a little down on the weekend about it, but it is, you know, it's just part of it, and we got to deal with it. So I found, you know, got that and a few other things maybe going. So need a little luck, and yeah, I'll have a chance. So I'm excited to get out there. It's going to be a fun weekend and ready to make the most of the opportunity.
Hey guys, Jason Christie here. We're getting ready to start the 53rd Bassmaster Classic, and you know, coming into the event, being the defending champion, it's a lot of pressure. You know, a lot of pressure from the fans in a good kind of way. I don't mean that negatively, but here's one thing that's for sure is nobody puts more pressure on me than I do myself. You know, I want to do good, but also I know that there's a reason why out of 53 classics, there's only been a few guys that ever do it back to back. So we have a talented field. You know, and coming into this, being, I guess I've been told a favorite or whatever. I don't consider myself a favorite in Tennessee, but I look at it differently than a lot of guys. You know, they look at it kind of negatively. For instance, I try to use a lot of that stuff positive, like the spectator boats. You know, I get me 10 or 15 boats tomorrow follow me. I'm going to use that to my advantage. You know, I see an old boy fishing, or I feel like maybe I can pull into an area and block the area. I know that's probably not good to say, but you know, if I want to have 15 or 20 or 30 boats follow me, I'm going to use that to my advantage. Maybe I need the water to dirty up. I'm going to run down, turn around, and come back, let everybody flush the bank. I'm going to pull up there and flip the jig. So, you know, that's the kind of things I try to do, because without those spectators and without the people watching, then we don't have a sport. So, yeah, I'm glad to be here and really humbled and honored to represent this group for the past year. Gosh, I would love to make it 2 years in a row.
Hey everybody, Lee Livesey here. We're at Media Day 2023 Bassmasters Classic, and we're talking momentum in the sport of bass fishing. You know, I've been to 2 classics before. I had a Super 6 last year and a top 10 the year before. I've felt it. You know, I've tasted a little bit. You know, I've won 4 trophies in the last couple years, 3 elites and an open. I just had a big win in Texas in a different series 3 weekends ago. And it's something that's real. It's momentum. It's being confident in yourself. It's being confident in what you're best at. And that's what I'm going to do here. You know, I haven't really figured anything out that's in my wheelhouse, but that's what I'm going to keep pushing. If I'm going to win here, it's going to be doing something that I like to do, something that I'm good at. You know, power fishing, super shallow, for some largemouth and trying to mix in some smallmouth too, because I think you need that. But it's just staying true to what you're good at. You know, confidence is huge. Momentum is huge in the sport. You see it all the time. You see when Ray Hanselman made his run in the Coastas. You see it, you know, with Buddy and Brian lately, and myself too. You know, confidence and momentum in the sport of bass fishing is huge, and that's what I want to continue here. I'm going to keep it in my wheelhouse, stay true to what I'm doing. I'm confident that I'm going to start catching some bigger fish with the weather coming and doing what I like to do. And at the end of the day, you know, when it happens, and it's your time.
Hey guys, Corey Johnson here. We're at Media Day, and this is kind of my mindset going into the Classic. I don't want to finish 10th. I don't want anything like that. My goal here is to win, and I'm going to make a long run, and I'm going to put all my eggs in one basket, and I'm just hoping that it's going to work out for me. It's an area where I've had the biggest bites, so I'm going to put myself in that area and grind her out, and we're going to see what happens. That's sort of, you know, what the Classic's all about. Is we got a week-long practice, you know, before the tournament, and a lot of practice is figuring out where the fish are, looking at the future forecast, and figuring out where these fish are going to be. And I think that's really something you have to do while you're out on the water. I mean, you can take a look and see what you think, but you really got to let the fish tell you what they're going to do and what they want. And I feel like that's how guys win the Classic, is being able to read, adjust on the fly, and that's what we're going to try and go with here.
Buddy Gross here, Bassmaster Elite. You know, we're on the Tennessee River. The big thing about the Tennessee River, we got rising temperatures, days are getting longer, all the trees are blooming. You can pull up on any bar on the Tennessee River on any chain at any minute and bust a 20-pound bag. It can happen here, and it may happen here. It's changing, and it's changing fast. I just hope it happens on the bar I pull up on.
Largemouth or smallmouth?
I think it could be a mixed bag. You know, all over the Tennessee River, I have caught largemouth and smallmouth together if you find that spot. And if you find that spot, that's what it's going to take to win the Bassmaster Classic this week.
Will Davis Jr. here. This is my first Bassmaster Classic. I'm looking forward to it. It's in Knoxville, Tennessee, and I'm looking forward to seeing everybody and weighing in on the biggest stage. You know, it meant the world to me if I won this Classic. You know, there's been one other guy that has won it through the nation that won the national championship that same year, and that was Brian Kershaw. So that would be even more special. You know, I'm just going to go out there tomorrow and grind with the best of them, because the fishing's been really tough, and the weather's changing. These last night and tonight, you know, is more stable, more warmer, so I think that's really going to be crucial on moving the big girls up. So that's all we can hope for. So we're just going to go out there and try our best and see how it goes. Yeah, it's, you know, when the current's going, it's really just one type pattern deal. This week the current's not near as strong, you know, as it has been in the past. So with that being said, it's going to be a lot of jumping around and doing a lot of junk fishing. I don't think it's going to be one off one bait unless, you know, Gussy wins off his deal. But I think a guy's got to have 4 or 5 baits on his deck to win this tournament.
Kyle, if fans at home never get to go to Media Day, we'll do our best to get some of those sound bites and the reactions. But it is interesting, just hours before they take off for day one of the Classic, the biggest event of the season of their sport that we participate in, how different guys can be so calm, how different can be so determined, how some can just be like, hey, I'm enjoying this event, and then they flip the switch when they're running down the river. But definitely some of these guys, there was plenty of uncertainty. I mean, it was 44 degrees the previous 6 or 7 days, and then on Media Day, my forehead was a little red and sunburned for Bass Live the next few days. I had to put makeup on because it was 70-something degrees and sunny that day, and it continued to be that through the event. So much change, so much turbulence, and so many different mindsets of those Classic competitors.
Yeah, no question. I mean, the demeanors of the guys are so different. You know, there's some guys that, you know, I won't name names, but there's some of those guys that are out, you know, hitting up the bars at night, you know, and are super laid back and, you know, are not going to do anything differently. And then some of those guys are just like, I mean, it's like complete tunnel vision. And that's not a diss on either of those guys, those types of guys, because it works, you know, for specific styles. Like I gave Louis Minetti a hard time all week because I felt like I was just, you know, making it seem like he just didn't care. And he said, dude, I'm going to catch him, like as calmly as can be. And, you know, he makes the final day. So, I mean, it just goes to show you that everybody has a little different approach at it, and everybody has their own style and mindset for sure.
That's a great point you just mentioned there. Some little accolades and kudos. Louis Minetti does make the top 25 and fishes the final day. He's just the third college angler in the history of the program to make the Classic and make the final day in that same year, joining Jordan Lee, who got 6th at Lake Guntersville in 14, Cody Huff, who got 24th at Lake Guntersville in 2020, and I think Louis Minetti finished 23rd and stayed exactly where he was going into the final day. So congratulations to him. He joined some elite company there. And then kudos to Jonathan Dietz, our highest finisher that was not an Elite Series pro. I believe he finished 13th place from the Bass Nation. Young angler from the Northeast, got it done. Kind of had a different kind of perspective all week. Like, he just seemed like he didn't know what to expect at the Classic. He didn't really know. He had never been to one in person to begin with, and then made it happen there. And then we had a Opens winner, JT Tompkins, one of the youngest anglers in the field. He made the final day as well. So we had the Opens, the Nation, and the College Series represented on the final day of the Classic. The team champion did not advance on the final day. The other Opens winners and Nation guys didn't either. But so we had about 22 Elite Series pros advance the final day, 3 of our amateur series, which 3 out of 13, 3 out of 12 that make it. Not too bad of a ratio. It's always interesting to see who can factor and maybe if one shows up there. But overall, what a great event. I love the topsy-turvy nature of it. I was still so perplexed at how quickly the water warmed up in some of those places and some of the techniques we saw. I mean, Brandon Cobb making the top 10 on a buzzbait. You get Jeff Gustafson winning in 20-plus feet of water. You have guys who are cranking just straight mud banks with a lipless crankbait. We saw some quarter ounces come out, which is like an East Tennessee thing, I feel like. We had some spinnerbait bites come in. We had flipping a jig. There's a lot of different things that happened. Brian Schmidt threw a shaky head. So I like the diversity and how it played out. But yes, if that water was a foot or two higher, this event might have been a totally different deal.
Yeah, no question. It'd have been interesting to see. Obviously, we'll never get to see that, but
which is why we predicted, in the show before the Elite Series kicked off over a month, Brandon Card said that this place has never been this low at this time of the year. And so I don't know if they were holding it back, expecting more rain, or if they were afraid of the forecast, what it was. But that's why I didn't think smallmouth would win it, or that you would even be able to target them for 3 days, because it was going to be so far along. But who knew we'd have below freezing temperatures for 5 straight days, and so I think that's interesting as well, trying to predict how a Classic is won. I think the only person who ever has predicted it correctly was 2010 KVD at Lay Lake, when he said, I'm going to win it on this gold lipless, like in November, and wins it in March or February doing it, So I think that the Classic is so wild. 3 days, so much can change. Practice is different. All the media attention. It's such a weird event to prepare for.
Yeah, and this is the part of the show where I want to make an excuse as to why our fantasy teams are not producing worth a crap, because we're having to make these predictions, and I'm writing my fantasy column like 2 weeks in advance before the tournament. So what ends up actually playing out a lot of times is not even remotely what we think it is, based on conditions and things like that are hard to predict and assume. But I just wanted to take that opportunity real quick to say that that's why we're no good at fantasy fishing anymore, because it's so difficult to predict so far in advance. And all you guys up there in the top 90% up there, picking your lineups right the day before the tournament starts. We're not going back on it. We're gonna stand in there. We're gonna take our butt whoopings.
We're doing it for you guys. I just want to say we're doing it for you guys, and I think that's why we get better as the year goes on, because actually after the spawn, everything stabilizes. Even though post-spawn changes and stuff, like there's no longer dramatic things that are going to crazily affect something on the water. Like, who would have thought Seminole and Okeechobee played out the way they were necessarily. And so that's all we can say. But I will say, I believe Hooked Fishing, that Instagram account, has now, I am the highest pundit, which is hilarious. We have like the Opens conglomerate guys. We have like the public mixed in, and then it's like all the pundits at the bottom. I have now risen to the highest in fantasy fishing out of the group, I think.
That just proves my point even further, though, is because you get to make your predictions even a week past the time that we do. So I mean, it makes
whoa. I lay my whole team out the whole year. When we do the podcast, I don't go back on it. You know that, and that's always at least
I've got some inside information from Such, and he says he still hasn't seen that.
Oh, but that's Such. Just because he ain't seen it. I mean, do you think you're going to show? Do you show your wife every single thing you put on the grocery list? No, you just go to the store and get Oreos when you do, but just trust that they were already there mentally. Like you already had them on your list. I've had my lists. I'm not trying to, what bragging rights can I get with Mike Sukun? Absolutely none, because he doesn't even trust me, even if I do beat him. But that's neither here nor there. Kyle, for the episode 119 of the Inside Bassmaster Podcast Classic review. So glad Jeff Gustafson jumped on with us earlier this week. I know he's a busy guy, knocked it out with us. What a great win for him. Life-changing. Puts him up there in the history books in a couple different ways. And I know that he's going to represent well. But now he, other than Justin Barnes, is the first or second qualifier of the 2024 Bassmaster Classic at Grand Lake. You're from Arkansas, and you lived up in that Northwest Arkansas area. Give us a little thoughts of late March Grand Lake next year.
I hate to predict that far in advance, but
lock your fantasy team in right now.
I would think. Okay, so here's my suggestion, and I don't know how to put this into words, which is kind of difficult. But in that part of the country versus the Southeast, the part of the country I live in now, you get some of those big, long warming trends here in Alabama, Georgia, Florida, obviously Florida, but all these states in this general part of the country, and things can speed up quickly, really, really quickly. Typically in that part of the country, and like I said, I'm going to say this and just jinx it all to crap, but in that part of the country, it's way more of a consistent, I guess, trends, progression, I guess.
Yeah, 40s at night, maybe 60s in the day, but it's like that for a while.
For sure. And you'll get some warming trends, and it's possible by that time. I mean, we might be talking about freezing temperatures in the end of March, but the fishing is not going to change enough, I guess is what I'm trying to say, in the time period from practice to, the tournament. And like I said, it's kind of a hard thing to predict, but it seems like more often than not, that cold will continue to stay around even when you get some warming trends, to where it's not going to change the fishing so drastically that we're sitting there talking about, are they going to catch them on bed? Or are they going to catch them, fishing a jig on bluff walls? Whatever the weather is the weeks leading up, we'll have a pretty good idea, in my opinion, of what will play out. I think that, obviously you're still going to be talking about big time pre-spawn in that area, barring some massive warm front that comes through. I think that those fish they'll be fat, they'll be ready to eat. The only thing that I will say, and we'll see how this all plays out, but that lake has a really bad history that I can tell from fishing it and from seeing other tournaments there, to where it goes completely dead, completely dead for a week at a time before the fish spawn. And I don't know when that's going to happen, but okay, for example, and you can go look at this. This is real factual proof of this happening, even beyond my years fishing Grand Lake when I was in college. The year that KVD won the Elite Series tournament on Grand Lake, the weights were fantastic. Everybody caught them. It was awesome. People were catching fish, doing all sorts of things. If you look back, I want to say 1 week before that tournament happened, there was a Toyota series on Grand Lake, and it was awful. I mean, to the point that I think over half the field zeroed over the course of 2 days.
One during the class, or right the week before the Classic, the same way. There was guys who double zeroed. Some of the best anglers in the Midwest double zeroed.
Crazy. So I mean, that lake is so bizarre in that sense that when it's tough, it'll make you scratch your head thinking you don't even know how to catch a bass. But when it's good, it's it's so good. So I think that it being later in March, I think will help that. I think we'll see a fantastic, tournament, but it does scare me just a tad, because I've experienced the part of that lake where it's everything's perfect and the fish aren't biting. What is happening? So no, I think it could go either way, but I'm optimistic that it will be a catch fest, and there will be good weights and there'll be consistent weights throughout as well.
There could be so many possibilities. We could see a jerk bait or a crankbait factor big time. We could see a big swim bait, around those docks and the shelf, rock on the bank. We could see jig that's worked around the docks plenty in past events there. You could see the Elk River or the Neosho or down at the bottom of the lake play. There's a lot of different, depends on water level as well, but big old spinnerbait. I mean, we've seen quite a few different ways to get it done at Grand Lake the past couple of times we've been there. And it'll be 8 classics in between. So we were there in 16, so 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 7 classics in between the 2 times that we've been at Grand, previously. So we'll see how it goes. But 2024 Grand Lake Bassmaster Classic, Tulsa, Oklahoma, we're already thinking about that one, but we still have 7 Elite Series events this season, and the next one will be at Lake Murray in South Carolina. We're going to have a South Carolina Swing, Murray and Santee Cooper, April 20th through the 23rd. We'll kick off for Lake Murray, and then April 27th through, I guess there's 30 days in April. Yeah, 30 days in April, or 30, there might be 31, but up until the last 2 weeks of April, we'll be in South Carolina for those events. Should be great. My neck of the woods for Murray. I'm just a little farther north in North Carolina, but really enjoy that place and how it should fish. There are a couple different potentials, but we got plenty of time to get to that. Kyle, for the Classic Recap Show, Jeff Gustafson, myself, Kyle, Jessie. This is the Inside Bassmaster Podcast presented by Black Rifle Coffee Company. We appreciate you tuning in. We'll see you next time.